Hey, what's up? Andrew Kramer here for videocopilot.net, and welcome to another very exciting tutorial for After Effects. So, today, we're going to be creating this fantastic portal effect, and I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, I just clicked on a link that showed a blue portal, and here we are, and now it's orange. Am I in some kind of alternate reality? What's happening? Well, first of all, take it easy. We're just deviating a little bit. We're going to make it orange, but you can change it to whatever color you want. In fact, you can make the portal look like anything you want. So please, check this tutorial out. We're going to show you a lot of different ideas, and hopefully you guys can make some cool portals. I mean, look, portals are like the coolest thing ever. They would solve a million problems. No more mail, no more driving, no more, waiting at school after soccer practice for your parents to pick you up and it's pouring rain. I mean, bam, you're just home watching The Simpsons, whatever it is. So let me show you what we're going to be creating. A little bit of background information. We created a little promo video called Demon Cam. So let's take a look. And basically, this portal opens up, and this enchantress comes out, and it's this crazy shenanigans, all for an iPhone app that Video Copilot created that I'm going to plug right now. And basically, it's an iPhone app that allows you to videotape yourself and then create like a demon face warp. So, bam, it's got sound effects, and it does like motion tracking inside your iPhone. Or hopefully we'll be able to port it to Android in the future. So if you want to check out the film, go to demoncam.com. You can watch the film. You can check out the app. You can buy the app on the App Store. And of course, check out the inside look or the behind the scenes video. We posted it on the site, but it's got a lot of great information. We take you behind the scenes and show you all the different things that went into creating this little film. And, there's just a lot of different visual effects shots and things that hopefully we're going to be going over in tutorial style over the next few weeks. Let's jump back over into After Effects, and let me show you this other example. We're going to go a little bit more advanced at the end of the tutorial and take a look at this this example. So let's take a look at like a little slower here. Here we go. You ready? Here we go. So if we look closely, we can see that her nose comes through, and then the rest of her face, and then her neck, and then her body. So it has this really cool three-dimensional quality as she comes through another dimension. That's pretty deep, I mean, if you think about it, so don't. But basically what we're doing is we're using a 3D depth pass, and we're using that as sort of a reveal mask so that when she comes through, it looks like her face comes through first, and just looks a little bit more realistic. So we're going to get into that and a bunch of other cool things. So now, if you're new to After Effects, please check out the basic training. It's free. It's 10 tutorials. Check it out. All right, let's go and get started. Now, which one should we create first? We could do this one, a little friendlier. She comes out. Hey, I brought board games. A little happier. Or we can do this one where she comes out and time to die. And I'm thinking, what happened to your sister with Scrabble and Monopoly? Let's do the happy one. How about it? So first, let's take the background video and we'll drop that onto a new comp. And basically, we've got some fire burning. And then we have the enchantress, and we'll put that right on top. So she comes walking out. Now we've got a green screen, and then we shot the plate all by itself. So pretty straightforward. We're in this sort of Renaissance room, Braveheart room, and we just had this portable green screen and worked out nicely. So first thing we need to do is we need to key out the green. Now, when you're doing color keying, there's two things to think about. First, creating the transparency and getting rid of the background. And number two, getting rid of the green tint. That's also known as spill suppression. So we're going to take a new approach to color keying, and one that I've been using for a while and that usually solves a lot of my problems. So the first thing, I'm going to duplicate my clip. So we'll take the footage, choose Edit, duplicate. Then I'll choose Layer, Pre-Compose, and that's going to put it in a new comp, and we'll just click Leave All Attributes and hit OK. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose Effect, Keying, Key Light. Now, we're going to apply it directly to the pre-comp. Now, what I want to do is take the screen color and click on this sort of broad green color. Now, I'm going to solo the clip, or I'll just hide our second copy. And right away, we can see that the green is being pulled out, and it's looking pretty good. Key Light actually does a really nice job. However, with some types of footage, usually lower quality footage or footage that's not uncompressed from like a DSLR or things like that, we have a lot of compression artifacts. So using Key Light alone doesn't always work. So here's the recipe for keying that I like to use. First, I set the view to intermediate result. So what that does is it gets rid of the automatic spill suppression. And here we can actually see that the green tint is still on the clip. Now I'm going to set my screen gain to about 105. I'm also going to solo the clip, and we can see that we have a little bit of haze in here from the green, and we want to try to get rid of that. So there's a couple of different ways to do this. First, we can go into the screen matte, and we can turn up the clip black, and we can bring down the clip white. And what this basically does is crunches the alpha. So let me look at the screen matte. So this is like the alpha channel in sort of a visual mode. And if I adjust the clip black, you can see it kind of crushes that. Now the problem here is if we crush it too much, we lose the intermediate detail in the hair, like the semi-transparent nature of it. So we want to be careful not to do that too much. So we'll bring that back out to maybe 10, and we'll bring this back up to 80. So let's see if we can find a slightly different solution. So I'll set this back to the intermediate result, and I'm going to double click on our Enchantress, which is going to open up our pre-comp. So here's our footage. Now, what I'm going to do is create an adjustment layer. And what I want to do is, right here we have this really nice even green color, but right here it's a little dark. So what if we color corrected it in this area to make it a little brighter? Well, I'm going to do that. So I'm going to take the pen tool, and we're just going to select this area here. And we'll choose color correction curves, and we'll just brighten it up a bit. And then we'll hit F, and we'll feather the mask so that it blends nice. And especially in these shadow areas, we want to bring that up a bit so that we don't have any contrast shadows. Now it's still a little dark here, so I'll duplicate the layer, and I'm going to bring this mask down to just the smaller area here. And maybe brighten that up just a little bit. So if we look at the difference here, we've brightened it up quite a bit, and we just want it to look a little bit more even. So that's not too bad. So let's go back into our background layer, and let's see if it's made much of a difference. So here is the screen matte with our color correction on, and I'll go ahead and take a screenshot, and then we'll come in here and we'll shut the color correction off. And now we can compare the two. So what's nice about this is if we look at the hair, we have this semi-transparent area, and we're going to work on this a little bit, but it's still there even when we get rid of all of these weird shadows down below. So it's kind of a nice little trick. So we'll set that back to the intermediate result. Check this out. Obviously, I've color corrected the green screen, but I've also color corrected her arm, and it looks a little unnatural. So how do we handle that situation where I've changed our actual source clip? Well, if you remember earlier, we talked about creating the transparency and then worrying about getting rid of the green tint. Well, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to turn on our original clip. the first one that we didn't pre-compose, and I'm going to set the track matte to the alpha of the layer above it. Now the alpha is the layer that we just created with the key light. So what's happening is now I'm using the original clip's color information instead of the clip that actually has the color correction on it. So you can see the difference there. The original is a little bit darker and looks a little bit more natural. Let's refine that key a little bit. So the way it's going to work is instead of adjusting our clip, we're going to go up here to the alpha with the key light and make a few adjustments. So a couple of areas I'm concerned about: her cheek and her hair. So first, we'll set the screen pre-blur, which sort of blurs the image before the key. So we'll click on that, and that makes it a little bit nicer. And we also want to play with the screen balance. And the screen balance is an interesting kind of recipe. And if we look closely here as we move it around, it sort of adjusts the midpoint balance between what's transparent and what's not, based on its its color and some other kind of other things that are happening. So we want to tweak some of these settings till we get most of the semi-transparent area gone. So now the other thing I can do is I can play around with the shrinking of the edge. So I can bring it in, bring it out. So kind of a all-in-one kind of deal. So we'll set the shrink to maybe negative 1.5. That way we have a nice edge, but we're not losing too much there. So this is looking pretty good. Now we need to handle the spill suppression so that her hair doesn't look like it's glowing green. I mean, it looks good, but it's just not the ideal situation. All right, so we want to suppress the green as well as the halo around the edge of her hair. So I'm going to take our clip here and we'll set the track matte to no track matte so we can see the original clip. And then I'm going to choose Effect, Color Correction, Hue, and Saturation. And this effect allows us to adjust specific hues and specific colors. So we're going to switch this over to the green channel. And then we have some different controls here. So first, we have the saturation of the green. So let's just bring that all the way down. Now, it didn't quite make a difference because usually the green color is actually in the yellow area of the spectrum. So let's bring the fall off control over just a bit and bring our green selector over as well. So let's look closely here. What we want to do is try to isolate as much of the green as possible without affecting any of the other colors in the shot. So let's wrap this other fall off around to the other side just to make sure we get all of the light fall off color. And as we adjust this, we look closely here and we can see when it starts fading into the red. So we just want to carefully tweak it, and also we want to be sensitive of the colors around the face, etc. So this is pretty good. Now remember, we're not just going to wipe out all of the green. What we want to do is match this color a little bit more to the background so that it blends a little bit nicer. By desaturating the image, it helps me see where the colors start and where the colors end. So now that we have that set, let me set the track matte back to alpha matte for the clip above. And let's start adjusting this so that it matches our background. So first, let's bring the saturation back in. We don't need to wipe that out completely. I do want to move the hue over a little bit. So the hue is the color. So if we look in this area, as I move the hue, it actually starts looking a little bit better. And I can bring maybe the saturation down a little bit. And I can also bring the lightness down. So it's a little bright, remember? So if I bring it down just a touch. All right, so this is looking pretty good. Now let's get rid of these hands from the edge of our green screen. So we'll just take the pen tool and we'll just draw a shape just right inside here. I'm going to go ahead and just leave the top part. Our footage is actually widescreen. It's like CinemaScope. So what I'm going to do is change our comp settings to 1920 by 960 because the footage is actually a little bit more cropped than standard HD in the final output, so we don't actually need to worry about that. The truth is we changed the entire film to be super widescreen just so that I didn't have to worry about keying that part out, so it worked out pretty nice. All right, let's go ahead and create our portal. Now, we want it to be smoking hot, just like this fire in the background. So we have this smoke element that can be downloaded in the project file. So when you import it, right-click on it and go into the interpret settings and make sure it's set to loop. I have it set to loop 50 times. And that way we can use it and offset the time because it's a pretty short clip all by itself. So what I'm going to do is bring it out, and it's basically just this little smoke element. And what I want to do is pre-compose it. So we'll choose Layer, Pre-compose, and we'll click Move Attributes to New Composition. We'll call this Portal Smoky, and we'll hit OK. And then we'll double-click on it. And what I want to do is go into the comp settings. We'll make it a little taller. We'll make it like 1280. And then we'll create a white solid. And we're going to create the basic shape of our portal. So we'll just click in here and, I don't know, maybe we'll just use the oval. Save some time, you know? Instead of having to make 4 points, I'm already done. Genius. Okay, so we'll put this down here at the bottom. We'll take our smoke and we'll set it to screen. And so now it's you know, on top of this oval portal thing. One quick thing I like to do whenever I use a single element and duplicate it a bunch of times, I like to pre-compose it first and leave all the attributes. And the reason I like to do that is so when I make a bunch of copies and then I decide that, oh, you know what, I want it to be blue, well, then I can double click on it, go into it, you know, change the tint color to blue, and then all of the elements will update. So just a good idea. First, let's take our portal, we'll hit M, and let's bring the expansion of the mask down a bit, and we'll feather it out also. We don't want this to really overpower the magical elements too much, so we'll just kind of be careful with that. Now, there's a couple of different ways we can do this. Now, in the actual version, I used particular to emit a bunch of different instances of this element. But because it's a free tutorial, we want to make sure as many people as possible can follow along. So what we have to basically do is duplicate the clip a bunch of times and move it around. So one little expression we're going to use, I'm going to hit R, bring up the rotation, I'm going to alt click on it, and I'm going to type wiggle parentheses 0, comma 360 and another parenthesis. And what that's going to do is randomly rotate the element. So when I duplicate it, the clips won't look identical because one is rotated slightly in a different direction. So with that in mind, we're just going to go through, we're going to duplicate this a bunch of times. You know, you want to change the scale. You just want to, you know, throw this thing around. And we can actually do some more expressions on the scale and really get this thing dialed in. But okay, so let's make sure our original clip isn't influencing this too much, and it seems to be good. And one quick little thing. So we have about 24, better duplicate one, perfect. We have about 25 elements, and they're all running at the exact same time. So if you hit the tilde key, you can expand the window and just go through and just offset the time of some of these. And again, we can make an expression that would offset it, but we made the clip really long, so we're just going to, you know, adjust a few of these so that it looks like they're a little bit more random. So we'll go back to our background. We have our portal here. We'll set the transfer mode to screen. There we go. And we want to put this behind her, and we'll move it over to the side a little bit. And it's pretty much it. Let's go into the smoke element, and I actually do want to tint it. So let's make it blue. Maybe not as obviously blue. Also, here's a cool thing. Lock the color here. Go back into the comp. And then we can, we can adjust it. And it updates. Now, we did talk about not doing a blue portal. That's right. We're going to do more of a warm, menacing portal. So let's do that instead. So this is looking pretty good. I think doing this portal so many times, I've actually gone back in time and improved on my methods. Now, in the original clip, we have a bunch of particles flying out of this portal, and I have no idea why. It's just the air compression from the intermediate room. It's like when you go into a chemical lab and they have to clean you off before you can go in or go out. It's very similar to that. Has anyone seen the movie Outbreak? It's got Dustin Hoffman. Really good movie. It's about this monkey that takes this this medicine that makes it really, really smart, and then it starts taking over the world, basically, and then it gives all of its friend apes some of this chemical, and then they get really smart, and then they go into San Francisco and tie things up. So, pretty good movie. Now, or is that Planet of the Apes? I don't know. Very similar plots, actually. Moving on. What I want to do is create some of these microparticles. So we're going to create a new solid, and we'll call this particles. And we'll come over to the effects and presets. We'll type particle world, and we'll take that, drop it onto our comp, and now we've got some cool 3D particles that we need to adjust desperately. Now, we are using After Effects CS5, so particle world settings are a little bit different than in CS4, CS3, but you should be able to follow along. If you just click on the options, some of the settings will be inside of there for like motion blur and stuff. So first of all, let's go ahead and play around with these particles. First, let's make it directional. And then we'll rotate the direction towards the camera. So this is, I think that's away, and this is towards. So basically, we want to create some particles flying at the camera. So we'll go into the particle settings, set it to a faded sphere. Nice. And we'll make it nice and small. And we'll turn the motion blur on. So just click it here and then turn it on for the comp. So now we have motion blur. So in the older version, you go into the options, rendering, and then there's a checkbox for force motion blur. So same idea, different methods. All right, so again, we want to make these particles flying at the camera. So let's go in here. Let's turn the velocity up a bit. Let's turn the size of the producer up so that it's portal size. And we might even rotate the angle so it's slightly across the camera. And we'll move the position here and just push the angle. Nice. Is there too much gravity? I think there's too much gravity in real life. Wish there was a way to control that. So this extra kind of gives us a little variation, so it's kind of nice there. I like that, actually. All right, so we'll shut that off there for a second. And we've got particles flying. Maybe we bring that velocity down and just make sure that gravity's not affecting it too much. And we'll set the transfer mode to add. Cool. Maybe the birth rate is a little high. Maybe we'll set that to 3. So that's our base particles. So we'll duplicate this. And we'll go into the producer and let's make it a little bit bigger. And we'll go into the particles and let's make the particles a lot bigger. Because we want this to seem a little bit more like smoke. So we'll hit T and we'll lower the opacity of this so that it's just a bit of a haze. And might even make these even bigger. Set this to be a little more of a neutral color so that it doesn't come off as being too warm. We can look at that by itself. Let's see, we have, maybe bring that opacity down a little bit. So that looks pretty good. All right, nice. So this is created our particles, and now we want to create a more intense, like a glow. So let's create a new adjustment layer. I'll choose Effect, Stylize, Glow, which is somewhere there. And nice. So we'll turn up the glow threshold so that we only glow on our bright fire. And then we'll turn this up a bit and turn the intensity down just a touch. Now, one of the things I want to do here is create a mask on our adjustment layer so that we're not glowing the side of her face and some of these other things. So we'll just come in here about here. And let's shut the particles off for just a second. Let's move this glow and return. Let's move it right below the particles. And then let's feather the glow ratio. So we'll just set that to about 250. So that way our mask is a little bit faded. And let's see here. Now we can use the original color or we can change it to the AB color. And this way gives us a little bit more control over the color of the glow. Now, one of the things that's missing here is the color correction. So this is just raw footage, but let's give it a little bit more of a cinematic color. So we'll create a new adjustment layer, and we'll call this color correction. And I'll just show you a couple of quick ways I like to color correct. So we'll take the tint effect, drop that on there, and we'll take the curves effect and we'll drop that on there. So first with the tint, let's bring that down, 20-30%. And then with the curves, we can add some of the contrast back in. So we don't want to crush it, really bad. We just want to bring some of that rich contrast of the image. That's nice. And the other thing we want to do is maybe get rid of the overly warm tone. So we can go into the red channel and let's just bring that down just a little bit. We don't want to be too much because it'll start making the image look a little muddy, but we'll bring that down a touch. Go to the blue channel and we'll bring that maybe up just a little bit. And then I might just bring another curve adjustment out. And here we can just maybe play around with the color just a touch. So one thing I'll do is bring the red shadow down a little bit in concert with the blue channel. So I want to add a little bit of cool blue into the shadow. So we'll just crank it up just a little bit here. And then in the red channel, we'll just try to be careful not to lose all of that color. Okay, so it's looking pretty good. Now, the next thing I want to do is make the portal shut off or close. And so we can just go ahead, let's see, she comes out, and maybe right here we can just have it close. Doesn't really matter when. I mean, it's not even real, so you can just decide whenever you want it to close. We'll hit S on the portal, brings up the scale. And let me see here. I actually want to make sure that the center of the portal is down here, so it kind of closes in on itself. So use that pan behind tool to move the pivot point. So we'll move forward a few frames and we'll scale it down. So there it goes. Turn the motion blur on, F4. Maybe set the ease, do animation, keyframe assistant, and do easy ease, and closes kind of nice. In the original example, we had a cool distortion effect happen in the background. So what I'll do is I'll create a new adjustment layer, and we'll choose Distort Bulge, and we'll just, let's see, click on this, let's enlarge the bulge area and kind of place it where our portal was. And we'll put this layer just above the background below the portal. And what we'll do is we'll animate the height of the portal. So let's do something like, we'll set it to 0, and we'll solo those 2 layers really quick. And U will bring up those keyframes. So we'll go back a little bit and we'll set a keyframe at 0. And then when the portal starts closing, maybe we could go a negative number, maybe negative 0.7, and pin all the edges so that we don't lose it there. And it goes in, and then we'll set it back to 0 and it goes back up. So whoosh. Maybe control click on that middle point. That's nice and gradual. F9 will also set an easy ease curve like that keyframe there. So okay, cool. So we'll turn this all back on. Let's just check out the timing here. Now our background gets a little dark. Maybe we could just do an adjustment layer on the background over just this side area. So we'll feather it like 150. By the way, hit F. Bring up those feather settings. We'll just add a quick curve adjustment. I know I'm going a little faster. I'm just trying to show you just some quick little tweaks. So portal closes down. It brings with it this distortion mesh, and then it goes back. So we might taper this a little bit and then enlarge it. Okay, so looking pretty good. In the original example, the other thing I also did was added some Video Copilot lens flares. And so we could take the optical flares plugin. Now this is a plugin available from our website. Creates some really cool light effects. So if we type in optical flares, can drop that on there. Hit F4. We'll set that transfer mode to screen. And then we can move this lens flare around maybe to one side. Now let's go ahead and load an anamorphic lens flare preset. So we'll go into the options and we can shut the editor off, and we have the preset browser. And let's just go in here and try out some of these different flares. Let's see here. Michael Bay lens flare. How about this JJ lens flare? Really cool anamorphic flare, kind of flares up on the side there and just has some cool elements. And maybe we'll add an element to this. Let's add a lens orb element. So that way it's just a little more messy, and we'll hit OK. So we want it to match our color, so we'll set this to kind of a warm color. And I also want to add a curves adjustment so that we can bring the brightness down just a bit. Maybe a tint effect as well, so we can just bring some of that saturation out of it. Cool. So what we can do here is just play around with the position and the brightness. So what I like to do is just, let's see here, take the brightness, hit U, and the position XY. And we'll just move forward a little bit, and I'm just going to animate it down. And then we'll animate the brightness. So maybe we'll set the brightness down to 0. And then the brightness goes up a little bit, and then back down to 0. Hit U, and you can see those keyframes. So it's just like, whoosh. It's a quick little flash of light. And then we'll duplicate the layer. So we'll choose Edit, Duplicate, and maybe we'll switch the position. So let's move the position over here to the bottom and maybe have it go from here up a little bit. So we have something kind of going on like that. Maybe even it moves inward a little bit. Or better yet, how about it moves away? And then we'll offset the time of this. So let's see. Unsolo that. We have our flare going out about right there. So maybe we have a quick flash of light. you know. And another thing too about these optical flares is we don't always have to use them so brightly, so we can really bring the brightness down and just try to make them a little more subtle, or even add, you know, like a box blur on top of it so that it's a little bit more subtle in the shot and looks like a, you know, maybe even like an accident. So you want to play around with the flares and kind of pop them in and out and make it look a little bit more you know, chaotic for this particular shot. If you look at the example here, you can kind of see, you just see some little blue flashes of light that kind of come off the side, have a little bit of a blur on them so they're not so intense. So don't feel like you have to make them, you know, as dramatic as this. I'm just trying to do it so you guys can kind of see what's going on. But, you know, doing it subtly and, you know, with just some blur on it really looks nice. Okay, so we'll take a quick look. All right, now before we finish, I want to show you another advanced technique that you can use to reveal someone either coming out of a portal or a force field or coming through a wall that really works well. And you can kind of see the benefits here. You can really see that she's coming through and it just has the depth of a real person rather than just kind of fading in. Let me show you how I set this up. So inside of 3D Max, we have this sort of generic looking female model. And I've added just a few little things to match, you know, her outfit. And we have just a single plane that represents her hair. And the basic idea is to take your model and just try to line it up with your image. So you rotate it. You know, I do a quick little edit poly, and I take some of the vertexes and make sure I have like a soft selection on. And I just start moving them around just to line up with the actual picture, because you just want it to get pretty close. And, you know, it doesn't have to be perfectly matching, but this works pretty good. And then what you do is you go into the render settings and you go to render elements, and we're going to render off a Z depth pass. So you click add, go down there to Z depth, and you just want to go ahead and tweak the settings for the minimum and maximum distance so that you can have the very close and the very far. It's actually really easy to do, and you can do it with any 3D program, and you can probably find, you know, 3D models of people online. I know that most people that start out 3D modeling, the first thing they do is they model a woman. And I don't know why, I don't know how that started, but I assume it's from watching too much weird science, and they thought they could manufacture in the 3D printing. Well, obviously, the technology's not there yet, and I've looked into it, so I can assure you it's not quite there, but it's getting there. So what I've done is I rendered it out, and I have a Z depth pass that looks like this, and we also have our diffuse pass that has our alpha channel. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of start over really quick. I'm going to take the background footage, drop it into a new comp. And I'm going to cheat. I'm just going to come over here. We've already created the woman comp. So I'm just going to take the comp and her matte and choose edit, copy, and I'll just paste it in here. So flip that. And what the heck, we'll go ahead and set this to 960. Very nice. Let me move this down just a little bit here so we can see it. So we have the girl coming out. It's looking pretty good. One of the things we need to do is motion track our Z depth pass onto our actor here. So what I'll do is I'll bring out the two passes. And we have, let's forget about the Z depth. Let's take a look at the fall off pass for just a second. And I need to first line this up with our actress. So let's take the depth matte and parent it to the diffuse. So I can move this around and they'll both move around. So I'm going to go ahead, scale this up, maybe lower the opacity here, and we just want to line it up. Okay, so we've got it lined up roughly. So we'll go ahead and take our 3D fall off layer, and we're actually going to put it below our diffuse texture. Now let's make sure the opacity is up to 100%. And we're going to take the depth matte and set it to alpha matte. So that's just going to use the alpha from the original diffuse, and that'll be good. And what we need to do now is motion track this onto our footage. So first, let's mark the frame that we've lined up. So right here, we'll just hit the star. And then let's create a new null object. And then we're going to take our Enchantress footage and we're going to track it. So we'll bring up the tracker controls, click track motion. We want to track position, rotation, and scale. So we'll zoom in here, move our first track point maybe up here to our jewel, and maybe on her nose here. And the reason here is just the eyes. She looks around a little bit, so these are good points that don't seem to move too much. And we'll just go ahead and track it. Okay, and we'll go track forward a little bit. Okay, so that's enough for now, and we'll click Edit Target, make sure our null is selected, and we'll click Apply. Right, okay. So now we have our null object with our tracking data. So we'll go back to the frame that should be aligned by our marker here. And by the way, star will create a marker. And we'll take these two layers and we'll parent them to that null. So now, in theory, if we move this around, our sort of 3D character is kind of sticking to our actor. Now, that's good because we want to use it as a reference. Okay, so let's go ahead and simplify our project. So we'll take the depth layer with the 3D renders and our null object, and we'll pre-compose them. And this will be our depth layer, and we'll hit OK. And then we'll take our Enchantress footage and the track matte with the key light, and we'll pre-compose that. And we'll just call this Enchantress. And that's good. So this is the basic setup. Now let's just add our smoke portal that we created earlier. I'll just use the one I created earlier. And let's set it to channel invert. And let's maybe tint it and maybe add a curves adjustment. So we'll set the transfer mode to multiply, unsolo it, or actually let's solo it with the background while we create it. So we'll scale it up, maybe darken it just a little bit, maybe duplicate a copy of it, edit, duplicate, and offset the time of it, and we'll scale it up a little bit and lower the opacity. This just makes it look a little bit more menacing. And maybe a quick tint. Maybe make it blue or something. And we have to have some color correction. So let's go back. Let's take our color correction here and paste it into this comp too. So it's a little dark. Let's go to the RGB channel and just brighten it up just a little bit here. And maybe our background layer should just be brighter so that we can see the smoke more. Okay. Perfect. So now we have our Enchantress and we have our depth layer. All right, now our goal is to make it so that our Enchantress is revealed based on the depth of our Z pass. So we want our nose to come first, and then the rest of the face, and then the neck would come last. So we want to make sure it looks very three-dimensional. So what I'm going to do is choose Effect, Color Correction, Levels, and then I'm going to bring the input and output down. And what this is going to do is create a really tight selection around the the color spectrum. So bring that in nice and tight. And then if I choose Effect, Color Correction, Exposure, we'll put this on top here. Then as I adjust the exposure, we're sort of adjusting the Z depth. So let's go ahead and set the Enchantress to the Luma Matte. So we may have to adjust the position here just a little bit. Scale it down. Probably do a quick little blur on our depth layer in the very beginning. Maybe like 4 pixels. Okay. So what I'm going to do is animate the exposure. So as I animate this, we sort of reveal our Enchantress. So it looks pretty good. Now, if we want it to be softer, we just loosen the clamp on the level. If we expand this out a little bit, then we're not going to see such a dramatic change as she's revealed. Okay, so what I want to do is I'll unsolo our layer here. And we might want to bring her down a little bit. And I'll maybe put the color correction on top of everything. There we go. And then I'm going to take the depth layer and we're going to animate the exposure. So we'll click the stopwatch. And we'll move forward in time and open up the exposure. Now, there's a few things that we may have to clean up and, make some adjustments or whatever. But it's a good start to creating, some good looking depth as she comes out of this, dark little portal. So let's take a quick look here. So you can imagine if this were something more substantial, it could be her coming through a wall, or hopefully you guys can see the potential here of her, being able to use that depth map as a way to reveal, your actor either going through something or just giving depth to, an image that doesn't really have it. And maybe if a hand is going through a portal, you could use a 3D, hand image to create a depth map from. But, having that volume map really makes a big difference. All right, well, I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. I've got a lot of different things going on, from advanced keying tips to, depth maps and color correction. So hopefully you guys got a lot out of it. And of course, be sure to check out our website. We've got tons of things happening on the forum, on the blog, and of course we have some really cool products that help support the site, help us create these tutorials and all that good stuff, optical flares and some additional presets, not to mention the Action Essentials that has tons of smoke and fire and other cool things that you could use to make a really cool portal. And this might be the first time ever promoting it, but come check us out on Facebook. I don't know what it is, but sometimes we post pictures or random videos and things that we don't always post on the website. So, come check it out. That's it. I mean, I got the plugs in, we got the tutorial, we actually did some decent stuff. I'm pretty happy. So anyway, my name is Andrew Kramer, and thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next time.